Welcome to the speaker series on A Shotglass of Recovery.
Yeah. Yeah. You get a house, you get a car, then you start thinking that's all you are, but you don't know the truth. So let me spell it out for you. Now I got your attention, now there's a start. Now sit and listen to my favorite part. Life's been giving us some clues. The answer lies inside of your.
Welcome to A Shotglass of Recovery, the speaker series. I'm your host, Lisa M. This is where we share powerful, real stories from the speakers of AA Solution Seekers Toronto, my home group. People who are living the solution and walking the path of recovery one day at a time. If something you hear here resonates with you, we invite you to show your support by dropping $1 or $2 into our PayPal virtual basket. It helps us keep carrying the message and making these recordings available to others who may need them. Now let's get into today's speaker.
Hi, everybody. I'm a grateful alcoholic. My name is Mary, and I'm coming to you from Eugene, Oregon on the West Coast. And it was just said, my home group is the Women's Popcorn Meeting. It's an online meeting, started about 5 years ago. So, yeah, I my sobriety date is March 24th of 2018. And I want to thank, I'm horrible with names. I want to thank those in service for having this meeting and for giving me an opportunity to not so much be of service, but to work my program, because that's what I consider this doing. So if I may, I didn't confirm ahead of time. Can I do a couple of readings? Is that okay?
Of course, yes, please do. Go
Okay.
right ahead.
All right. So these are my two absolutely favorite readings that are not from the big book. And the first one is out of As Bill Sees It, number 321, The Results of Prayer. And I want to clarify this before I go into it. When I came into recovery, I had such God trauma, I couldn't even say the word God. And the idea of praying, oh my God, that was not something that was going to even be possible for me. So these are really, really powerful readings for me. So the first one, like I said, is number 321 from As Bill Sees It, The Results of Prayer. As the doubter tries the process of prayer, he should begin to add up the results. If he persists, he will almost surely find more serenity, more tolerance, less fear, and less anger. He will acquire a quiet courage, the kind that isn't tension ridden. He can look at failure and success for what these really are. Problems and calamity will begin to mean his instruction instead of his destruction. He will feel freer and saner. The idea that he may have been hypnotizing himself by auto-suggestion will become laughable. His sense of purpose and direction will increase. His anxiety will commence to fade. His physical health will likely improve. Wonderful and unaccountable things will start to happen. Twisted relationships in his family and on the outside world will improve surprisingly. And I can truly say every single one of those things has come true for me. And my other favorite reading is from Daily Reflections, and it is January 1. And this is not for me. This is for every single one of us. And January 1 from the Daily Reflections reads, I am a miracle. The central fact of our lives today is the absolute certainty that our Creator has entered into our hearts and lives in a way which is indeed miraculous. He has commenced to accomplish those things for us which we could never do by ourselves. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 25. This truly is a fact in my life today and a real miracle. I always believed in God, but I could never put that belief meaningfully into my life. Today, because of Alcoholics Anonymous, I now trust and rely on God as I understand God. I am sober today because of that. Learning to trust and rely on God was something I could never have done alone. And now I believe in miracles because I am one. Those are really, really powerful to me. As I said, I had God trauma when I came in. I grew up in a religious family. We went to church, but we weren't, as a lot of people would say, holy rollers. But yeah, church was something. But the reason for my God trauma had nothing to do with church. The reason for my God trauma had to do with my family and the experiences I had there. I would have to pray to the God that I grew up with before there was abuse, before there was, things that traumatized me. And to this day, I still cannot and refuse. If it's said, I close my ears and I say something else. I cannot repeat the Lord's Prayer. But I do have a God. That God was there, but I rejected it. I knew it was there, but it was punishing and demanding. Little backstory. I was born in East Africa in the 60s. My father was with U.S. aid, and so there was a real big kind of culture shock. I came back to the United States when I was 4 years old. Also, while I was over there, I experienced potentially fatal electrocution at 6 months that could have killed me and my mother. Miraculously, I'm alive today, and she survived that incident. Today, that's not a punishment. Today, that's not, today I can put meaning into that experience. My family, with my father being attached to U.S. aid, attached to the embassy, well, they were responsible for putting on the cocktail parties. So I grew up with alcohol present on a daily basis, and I truly believe I had it in my system when I was born. I, as far back as I can remember, and it has been confirmed by my older siblings that, as soon as you could sit at the table and hold a glass, you were given a glass of wine with dinner. So it was just, I think they felt it was like, the right thing to do being in the international setting. I don't know. I don't know what their thinking was. That's not my place. But I do know that, it was always a part of my life. It was always present. And I can remember the exact time I took my first intentional drink alone, and that was at 8 years old. I came home from school. The abuse had escalated. I was the only one home. My parents always went to the fridge and grabbed a beer when they came home, so that was the natural thing for me to do. Home alone, I went to the fridge, I grabbed a beer, I sat on the front porch, and I drank it. Drank the whole thing. And, I don't remember exactly how I felt, but I know I felt better. And, the alcohol, like I said, it was there, it was present. The next time I really remember any kind of major, like, drinking thing was probably when I was like 14 or 15. And from that point on, I was a blackout binge drinker. After that first, incident where I was with some other people drinking, it took me 3 days to get over my hangover from that experience. And yeah, and I never thought I had a problem, even though, you know, anytime I took a drink, I was blacking out. I was stealing booze from my parents and stopping at the convenience store and getting a big pop on the way home and filling my or on the way to school, and getting a 32 ounce soft drink and, drinking some and then pouring the booze in and being drunk by the time I got to school because I hated my life. And yeah, it was just, didn't like myself. I didn't have friends. I felt isolated. I felt alone. I didn't belong with my siblings. I just, I never felt like I fit in anywhere other than with the drinkers. And even then, I didn't fit in because I passed out and then they made fun of me. But anyway, I'll fast forward to, you know, let's see, when I was a junior in high school, I had a fatal car accident, the kind that's like, the movie of the week type thing. It was prom night and we had been drinking and we got hit by a woman who was killed, but it was my boyfriend's birthday and her birthday at the same time, and he ended up going to jail. And my only concern was, oh my gosh, my parents are going to be so mad at me. We wrecked their car, and where's my pretty little hair thing? I couldn't be concerned with Will's family that just lost their mother. I had no concern for them. I had no concern for the fact that, my boyfriend was going to go to jail and possibly prison, that his life was possibly going to be ruined. I had no concern for any of that kind of stuff. And I never even realized that until several years ago when I really started, doing my fourth step. But, I went away shortly after that. I went away to a, a week long youth camp and I thought I found higher power. Well, I did. I found God, but that only lasted for about 6 months. And then I got right back into my past behavior. So from the time I was probably 15 until the time I was 54, the longest I ever went. I'm going to back up. I'm going to say from the time I was born until I was 54, the longest I ever went without a drink was 6 months. And as an adult, consciously doing that, after I grew up and got married, the longest I ever went without a drink was 6 weeks. And I figured, I'm not an alcoholic because I can stop for that long and it's not a problem. But as we all know, at least I know that if I try to pick up after a time, then I'll go right back to where I started. And that has been so true. Maybe that's why I never tried really quitting after that. But, my disease has caused so many things to happen, caused me to do so many things. I used to live in the mountains and I let my daughters drive 2.5 hours down to the valley to go to a basketball game, a state playoff basketball game with two of their friends in the winter and all the way back up with an open bottle of vodka under the seat. Yeah, that was a real smart thing to do. Um, and yeah, my husband found it when they got home, and that was, disastrous. He was my drinking buddy, but I was always the one to sneak it, to hide it, hide it in the car and drink and drive with the kids. Never ever got a DUI, not that I didn't deserve it, but yeah, I don't know today that I would say that I was lucky and never got one because maybe if I'd gotten one, I would have stopped drinking a lot sooner. The consequences I've had, geez, at least 7 car accidents that involved drinking, one of which I was on my way home from work, and it was the day my father had passed away, who was the source of a lot of my trauma. And I stopped at the liquor store and got some alcohol, and I had also been taking a lot of anxiety meds, psych drugs, and I remember getting pulled over about 3 miles from home and them asking, if I was okay. And I blamed it on the fact that my father had just died. And they said, okay. So I just have a couple more miles to go. And they said, okay, just be careful. Uh, Well, there's an S curve before my turn to the street I lived on. And, I pulled in the driveway and got out of the car and went in and I was really upset and I lay on the bed and a couple of minutes later I hear my husband scream outside. You left my blankety blankety and don't even say anything. Somehow I managed to run off the road and wipe out the whole passenger side of the car. The mirror, the door handle, stretched the whole thing. And I don't remember. Not at all. And we were supposed to leave later that day to go to the service for my father. So yeah, that things that I have done. I ended up becoming blind and bedridden because of my drinking. I developed alcoholic neuropathy and my feet started to go numb and I thought I'd been from a fall. And that was in January of 2016. And we had been living with and taking care of my mother, who came suddenly ill and passed away very, very quickly. And, that I made, I made her death about me. All I could do was just lay there and scream and cry and how my life was not going to be the same and how I couldn't go on without her. No concern for my siblings, no concern. It was just complete and total self pity, self absorbed. After she passed away, my husband's and my drinking really, really took off. And I would say, you know, I don't know how it could have taken off much worse because I know for the last probably 10 years, I never drew a sober breath. I was drinking pretty much every 15 minutes that my eyes were open. But, I developed this neuropathy and then that was in January. And then in May, I fell, May 27th, I fell and I broke my hip. And because of that, I became bedridden. And of course, I was drinking. I fell off the chair, and my husband had gone to go get more booze, and I fell off the chair and broke my hip. And, you know, anyway, so I became bedridden at that point. Then the last week of June, the first week of July, I lost my vision completely. So I was blind and bedridden, but I was still drinking. We moved in with my mother-in-law who could not smell, so we figured, drinking would be fine. And so when my husband would go to work, he would make certain that I had at least one, if not two, empty Ensure bottles in my bed so that I could drink throughout the day and my mother-in-law would not know because she can't smell. So if she sees the Ensure bottle in my bed, well, hey, then I'm golden, right? And she'll never know. Yeah, the things we think we can pull over on people, things I thought I could pull over on people. I got, I did manage to get a little bit better and start to walk again. And lo and behold, May 28th of the next year, a year and a day later, again, I fall and I break the same hip. And this time I spend 4 days in the hospital. I have to have 3 pints of blood because I'm so anemic because of my alcoholism. I can't get my blood pressure regulated. Then I spent 10 days in a rehab center, came home, and 10 days later, I was back in the hospital with alcohol poisoning. I was almost 5 times the legal limit. I weighed 123 pounds. I was smoking pot. I was drinking huge amounts of tequila. I was taking opiates. I was taking psych drugs. I'm doing all of this. I'm invincible. I sat down at the dinner table on Father's Day and remember dinner being served. And the next thing I knew, I woke up in the hospital and the look of disgust on that nurse's face, I was just, wow. It was crushing. I came home and an hour later I was drinking again. I remember my husband said, well, you're still drunk. You want another drink? I said, sure, might as well. It never got discussed. It never got brought up. He told me later that my mother-in-law said, well, are we going to discuss this or are we just going to let it drop? And it just got dropped. It never got brought up. And, I knew when I picked up that drink an hour after I came home, still drunk, that I was an alcoholic. I had always said, oh, I'm a potential. I have the potential to be. And at that point, it's like, well, that's my lot in life. That's what I am. I'm just going to live that way. I'm going to die that way. I've seen it happen to other people. And I was so down on myself. We had lost our home because of our drinking, because of some of the accidents we'd been in. But it wasn't. It was everybody else's fault. It was the bank's fault. It was, I couldn't take responsibility for anything. I was always asking other people for money and to bail me out. We had plenty of income. but yet not we, I managed to manipulate things so that my kids managed to get scholarships for sports because, it was too important to spend money on the booze. At one point, I think we were spending over $3,000 a month just on alcohol, you know. Anyway, so we lose our home. We're down, we've moved down to the valley, and my husband's transferred jobs within the same company, and he's got like 25 years, and never had a problem, and I had I started attending the church that I grew up in just because I felt it was the thing I needed to do, and I was searching for something, and I re- I reached out to this one couple, and I asked them to do a Bible study, but the reason my real reason was because I had socialized with them before and we drank the same thing. And I knew they would pick me up and take me to their home. And then on the way home, I could say, hey, could we stop at the liquor store? I didn't want a Bible study. I just wanted a way to get to the liquor store because I couldn't drive anymore, you know? So, and then luckily they caught on and that stopped. Anyway, I'm going to fast forward through all of that. My husband lost his job because of drinking and some other stuff. And I was really resentful and angry. And then I was asked by my physician to go to AA, and I said, no, I won't do that. I had a real bad experience with another 12-step program, and they're just out to ruin me, and I won't go back. That's not for me. And uh, then I just reached a point where I couldn't go on, and I asked my new therapist for where to turn, and he gave me some listings, and I started making calls the next day, and the place I really wanted to go wasn't open that day, so I called the second one. Well, guess what? My husband and I ended up going in the following Monday and doing our intake and all of that, and we began treatment. And like I said, that was in March of 18. 2 weeks after that, I can remember April 6th was the first day I entered an AA room, and I didn't know it was AA. A woman had come in and said, there's some really nice women's meetings I'd like to take some ladies to. And this program, did more than just AA. So I said, sure, I'll go. And, I got this ride and here I am blind and, having a hard time walking. And this room is full of 60 women. And I was like, oh my God, I want out of here so bad. I had nowhere to go. So I sat down and it was amazing how I was able to identify. I'm still in contact with the person that spoke that day that really hit me. And she was sitting there with a scarf on her head and, no hair and talking about how she had been through cancer and, in sobriety and all these other things that had happened to get her into her sobriety. And it was like, oh my gosh, that's me. When I was in treatment those first 2 weeks, it was like, well, you guys are here because you lost your kids or you got fired or you went to jail or you got a DUI or, they all had some kind of reason to be there, not because they wanted to be there. I was there because I wanted to be there. So I was different from them in treatment. But when I got to AA, it was the first time in my life I ever really identified and really felt like, wow, that's me. And I stayed. I got my sponsor that first day. I didn't know what a sponsor was. They talked in treatment about sponsorship, and I asked my my treatment leader. I said, "What is a sponsor? That sounds like something I want." And she says, "Well, that comes in AA. That's an AA." I said, "Well, I'm never going to have one of those because I'm not ever going to go to AA. That's just not me." And lo and behold, that very next day, I was in an AA meeting, and I've pretty much been ever since. The pandemic hit and I found Zoom, and Zoom has been, oh, I see the timer now, noon and short. So Zoom has been a boon to my sobriety. It opened me up to global sobriety, not just my local sobriety, the same women, the same meeting, hearing the same stories. I got to hear how so many other people have done it, and I learned so much. And I'm going to take this back to the beginnings of AA, which is we came from the Oxford group. And the Oxford group, they did two-way prayer. And to me, that is the heirloom roots of my program because that brings me back to me connecting with my higher power who gives me the ability to trust, to be willing to not pick up that drink. If I didn't have that higher power in my life today, just the other day, I know I would have picked up a drink because of the BS that has been happening. There has just been so much stuff. But, today I have a higher power that I can trust. Sometimes I call it the gentle universal spirit, Gus, or the creator of all things, a coat that I can wear. And there's so many different kinds of coats for all different kinds of situations. And I can loan them and I can borrow them and I can patch them. And, I have such a concept of a higher power that is guiding me through my life today. Things that I never ever thought would have been possible. I was isolated. I was alone. I didn't speak to anyone. Today I have friends all over the world. I have people reaching out to me and saying, thank you. You really helped me with that. Or, wow, that inspired me. That was not me. I was the one people wanted to stay away from. Nobody wanted to be my friend. You know, I didn't know how to be a friend. Today, I can see that my life has a purpose. As I mentioned, that electrocution. Today, I see that as that was the point when my higher power showed me that I can be attracted to something. Because what happened was I grabbed a hold of a 220 wire, and back then they were all cloth. They weren't plastic or rubber. And so the shiny wires going through, and I grabbed hold of that shiny, of that bright, and it grabbed me, and it grounded me. And at the moment I was getting ready to put my dependence on someone else, my mother, that power released me. And I know that my spirituality today has a lot to do with where I was born and the people that I grew up with, because it's more of a spirituality than a religion. I'm very, very deeply spiritual today. And I don't know, it sounds really strange, but to me, my happy place, the place I always wanted to go, my finances have never allowed, is back to the African continent. And I am grounded. That that power that entered me when I was 6 months old, I truly believe grounded me in the African continent because I have attended meetings all over the world, and meetings there, I have had the deepest, most meaningful relations, connections. I truly feel like I belong in those meetings with those women and a few men that things that my higher power has brought to my life. My husband and I live on our own. We no longer have to rely on relatives for housing. We don't have to rely on them for transportation. We don't have to rely on them for finances. We are self supporting. We are strong ever been. Nearly 40 years of marriage. I can't believe that is true for me. And we are closer now in these last 8 years than we ever were prior to that. I have a relationship with my children. It's not what I would like it to be, but it's much better. And, just yesterday, I had a disagreement with my husband, and it put me in a really, really dark place. And this is where my gratitude comes in. And it is that even though I was in pain, even though I knew I should have reached out, I shut my phone off. I shut my tablet off. I didn't turn on my computer. I didn't engage in any kind of uh, anything that would accelerate the negative feelings that were happening. I took action. I stayed quiet. I did laundry. I stayed busy, and then I just I just was. I was in the same space, but I was able to, like, I covered my head with a blanket and I was just there. And I was so miserable. I didn't want to be, but I let myself feel that. And I'm so grateful because in the past, when those feelings would have come, I would have tried to act on them. I would have over medicated. I would have gone out and gotten alcohol. I would have done really horrible self harming things. My gratitude today is I can allow myself to feel my feelings and know that they will pass. I don't have to live in that despair, in that negativity. I visit it, and by visiting it, it makes the good times so much better because if I don't have those down times, those hard times, those things that just really drive me absolutely freaking crazy and I want to kill my husband, then I can't be grateful. And I was grateful for the good times. I can remember walking into a meeting one day and saying, "You know what? I'm mad at everybody, and I'm mad at God. I can't fight me my chair." And everybody cracked up, and everything was okay. I can do that today. I can express my feelings in an appropriate place. I can be grateful for. I can see how far I've come. I can see, that. Here's a little example. Higher power steps up all over the place. I had been given the ability. I'd always wanted to write, but I hated to write. And I had these titles for books that I wanted to write, but I couldn't do it. Well, since I found this two-way prayer, which I consider, the heirloom roots of our program, I now, in the last like 2.5, 3 years, have a book that is almost finished, that is like a daily reader. I have a 3-book set that is stories, a workbook, and a guide. And my higher power directed me to start a Substack. And I did a post yesterday, and a friend in the program sent me a reading. And the reading she sent me was spot on to the post I made yesterday about feeling my feelings and not acting. That's higher power, completely and totally. I have this little, I don't know if you can see it because I'm on my phone. I have a little wheelbarrow tattooed on the inside of my wrist. And I heard a speaker a while back saying that faith and belief are pretty much the same thing. That faith and belief are like sitting in the audience at the circus and seeing the tightrope acrobat climb the ladder and grab the wheelbarrow and push it across the tightrope. Faith and belief tells me they're going to get there without falling. Trust is me getting in that wheelbarrow. That's the kind of trust I have in my higher power today. And in this program, I can be in a dark spot and not like myself, but I know it'll pass and I can learn from it. Couple of closing little thoughts here. We all, these aren't mine. These are things that I've heard in meetings that, we all make a list. We all, whether it's written or whatever, we all have a plan of what it is we want to do today, whether it's written or in our head. We need to have two. We need to have a to-do and a to-da. And at the end of the day, the only one that matters is our to-da list. I can not do anything on my to-do list. I can be a nasty individual. But if I don't pick up a drink and I stay connected to my higher power, then ta-da! It's been a wonderful day. And the other thing is that no matter what, I always win because things go my way and I win. Or they don't go my way and I learn a lesson and I win. So that's how I stay grateful today as a grateful alcoholic. And I'll end it there. Thank you so much for letting me share.
Just a quick reminder to subscribe, like, or follow if you like the show on any of your favorite listening platforms. If you like the speakers and other content on the podcast, please show us some love by leaving a review and consider making a PayPal contribution to help keep the show going at paypal.me/A Shotglass of Recovery. Every dollar makes a difference, and we thank you. Our speakers come from my AA home group, AA Solution Seekers. We meet every day at 7 a.m., so pop in sometime and say hello. Until next time, thanks for joining me on A Shotglass of Recovery.
Everything you do, the answer lies inside you.